I guess I'll read what I have up on the screen. I have a just a information sheet. Sue Ann Donovan will present, and then we'll take questions. We have 4 people who signed up who submitted questions and comments, and we will call on them first. And then people, everybody else can raise their hand if they have a question, and we'll call on you. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak to ensure everyone gets an opportunity. We may revise the time allowed to speak if the meeting time allows. If you're on a phone or phone and computer, you can press *6 to unmute your phone and press *9 to raise your hand. During the meeting, to raise your hand, you go to the participants icon at the bottom center of your computer or phone screen. Then at the bottom of the window, there's a click. You click on the button labeled "Raise Hand," and then as we when we get started, we ask that everyone turn off their video. That way, that will help with bandwidth for some people. Someone at 201-9811. What's your name? And I will type it on here on participants. The person who's called in at 201.
Hi, it's Kindy Jensen.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have someone who called in.
I didn't mean to.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry.
I can lower that for you. There we go. Might as well practice it now. Then we have someone who called in at 657-3354. You press *6 to unmute, and then I can type your name in so we know who's calling.
My name is Frances, Frances. Last name is Ali.
Okay.
And then to mute again?
Oh, it's *6 will mute and unmute. And then *9, if you have a question after when we ask people for questions, you can press *9. And that'll give us a raise hand sign.
Okay.
So again, Sue Ann Donovan will present. We have 4 people who submitted or submitted questions or comments. We're going to call on them first, and then if anyone else has questions or comments, we're going to call. You raise your hand, and we'll call on you. And it's and we'll give you 2 minutes to talk. If we have more time, we'll allow you to talk longer. Or we'll come back to you. And then when the meeting starts, we're going to ask that everyone. We're going to probably mute everyone except for Sue, and we're going to turn off videos, so which will help with bandwidth. So if I see one more caller at 277-2944, can you press *6 and give me your name? That way, if you have a question, we can call on you.
This is Lila.
Oh, hi, Lila. Okay.
Just listening, no comments.
Okay.
I think you need to mute me.
*6 will unmute you, and it will also mute you. So.
Oh, I have to do it. Okay, just a minute.
I could do that too. Sue, we have 31 attendees so far, and we had 47 people sign up.
Okay, well, wait a minute.
Okay.
I think you have to release my camera to me, maybe.
I could do that. Ask to start video. Do you see that?
Yep, got it. Okay. I will turn off my video once we get started. It really helps with bandwidth. Dolores, I'm going to share my screen now.
Okay.
Are you seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Give it a minute and then we're going to get started, I think.
We have a caller at 979-1021. Can you give me your name? And then that way, if you have a question later, we can know what your name is so we can call on you as opposed to your phone number. You press *6 to unmute.
Okay, I'm going to get started so that we can go through the PowerPoint and then we can go to comments and questions. We're mostly here to lay out some of the proposed rental code amendments and then take and gather comments so that we can share those with council as we discuss further the proposed amendments. So one of the things that we're going to do is, because we have a new computer database, it's called InterGov, and we're working on building the database right now. But it's going to have us move from a slightly different interface that's going to allow us to do some, we think, provide better service and make it easier for us to manage the program and for owners and managers to manage the program. So each property owner will be given a rental business record, and then that will assign them one business account. And then that account will have, each address will have its own rental license. So that will allow us to track them by rental license, which is now called a certificate. So really, it's just a change in more in terminology than anything else. Each rental license will have the contact information for that address, and the system will have a self-service function. So there won't be any need for us to send out applications and packets. There will be a sign-in that the owner manager can access the account through the computer and update the information and make changes through the system without the need for a paper application. You can have each property have its own management agent, or all properties can be managed by the same agent. An agent can manage a multiple of different properties for different owners under the system. So the plan is, through the system is an email will be sent out 60 days prior to the renewal inspection date. License renewal requests, including the prepayment of the initial inspection fee, can be made online. So if the rental inspection fails, the rental license will expire, just like your certificate. This is a slight change. Some other people may have heard of previous information on this when we thought that the license had to be suspended, but we've now learned that the computer system can act just like the certificate program and expire the certificate. The process for referral to the Housing Appeals Board is going to remain unchanged. The rental license will be reinstated. It won't be reinstated. You'll get it. The license will be renewed upon compliance. And the renewal inspection will be set on the same basis as the criteria we now use for a certificate length. So none of that is changing. One thing you may have heard something about is we are contemplating having knockout panels be removed. We have historically allowed a resident to exit a building from one unit through another. This does not provide a safe exit system. It's not supported by building and or the fire code. One of the things we find with these exit systems is you will have tenants who don't want somebody to break into their apartment or be able to get in, board up the knockout panel, put furniture in front of the knockout panel, do other things to not allow access to their unit. We found one apartment that I was in just today where somebody had painted over the exiting system, so it wasn't even functioning. We understand that this is going to require some floor plans to be altered to show code compliance. Some permits might be required for structural changes, and in some cases it may result in a reduction in units, but maybe getting larger units in order for the exiting system to work correctly. We are contemplating that knockout panels should be eliminated by a second license renewal inspection after June 1st of 2021, but no later than June 1st of 2025. We're also contemplating heating source upgrades. This does not affect boiler systems, just saying that right up. It is single forced air heat sources that move shared air within a building and multiple units. This is not legal under the mechanical code to have a single heat source that operates using the shared air. We have over the years been trying to phase these out when the main heating system fails and somebody comes in for a permit to replace that single forced air heat source, and we have them come in with a plan to supply each unit with its own heat source. We had an owner who did not pull the permit and put in the single source again. We found it on an inspection and told her she was going to have to separate the units into separate heating sources. They took it to the Building and Fire Code Review Board for an appeal of that mechanical code requirement under the mechanical code, and the board denied the request to maintain the newly installed forced air system and admonished staff on our side of the the rental side, that we needed to get these out of existence. And so we're again requiring the upgrades and have it phased out again, a second license renewal inspection after June 1st, 2021, and no later than 2025 is the current suggestion. Let's see, here we go. Another thing that we're considering is the familial status. Historically, we've excluded properties that are occupied by a mother, father, son, daughter of an owner from rental inspections. We believe this is a loophole that's maybe not preserving our housing stock. And this would require all non-owner occupied structures to be inspected. Again, we'd give them time to come into compliance. The other thing we've been asked to do is institute a training component to the license requirement. This has come from recommendations from one place is the Human Rights Commission would like training on fair housing. And we have talked over the years about having rental license process and code requirement training. So this gives us the opportunity to have two trainings, the fair housing and the rental license process, code requirements, discussions about need for workmanlike repairs, go over the Housing Appeals Board process, and then introduce people to the multifamily crime-free housing. Taking the multifamily crime-free housing at this point is not part of the rental license requirement, but it's a good opportunity to have the police department talk to owners and managers about what that has to offer them in the way of helping them run their rental properties in a safe manner. The other thing we're looking at is increasing fees. Never a fun topic. We haven't done any fee increases since probably 2007. The fees don't cover the cost of the inspection service. We're going to do an internal review of the fee schedule, make recommendations to council. The goal is over time to move closer to covering the cost of the entire program. Obviously, this wouldn't be enacted till post-COVID, probably starting in 2022. So sort of the steps that we're currently in amending the rental code. We're holding this public meeting so we can get input and discuss the changes. We'll have an update to council at a workshop to sort of discuss the feedback we receive and get their direction. We're gonna have to amend the code to coincide with the InterGov rollout, just on the process changes that the new system is going to require the code to reflect. And then amend the code to phase in new compliance standards. And there will be recommendations on adjusting fees. Oh, that last note, that isn't for this group. Chris Johansson is the director, and he was going to go talk to the Landlord Association about Section 8. So, sorry, I didn't mean to leave that on this code. So with that, I think we should open it up to questions. And I think Dolores said we had people who had already signed in. And so I believe we should start with those.
The first name I have
Go ahead.
is Maria LaFrance. If you still have a question.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want me to turn the video on, or do you want me to just talk?
If you're comfortable, you can just talk.
Okay. All right. Well,
Plus, either way.
okay. I own 2 properties that would be affected by these proposed changes. And I'll just go ahead and start my video. Oh, I cannot start my video. Okay. First and foremost, I applaud the city for trying to make residents safer. I think that is everyone's goal. However, I am opposed to some of these proposed changes, and I'd like to say why. First off, the 2 apartment conversions that I own and many others in the city, they're a vital source of small businesses. We're small business owners, and these conversions, while they're getting fewer and fewer every year, they're an entry point for people who want to be in this industry. Every city council member ran for office on the platform of providing affordable housing. And these apartment conversions are exactly that. They're affordable housing. A person making minimum wage can afford to live in some of my units that are the conversions. These proposed changes, the knockout panels and the furnaces, present a huge double whammy to small business owners who are still reeling from the pandemic and unable to evict non-paying renters. The cost of these proposed changes is much more than multiple years worth of profit, way too much to absorb in 1 or 2 or even 3 years. For example, to upgrade a heating system to say baseboard units not only requires replacing the furnace, but it would require updating the entire electrical to accommodate that. So we're talking $20,000 to $30,000. So I have a couple proposals regarding this issue. The first is on shared ductwork. For example, when I take my son to the doctor, every single exam room in that doctor's office, if you look up, you're going to see the dots on the ceiling, the vent. Every exam room shares the same ductwork. This is the case for many schools, offices, and even some hotels. And so I feel that to hold these small apartment conversions to a higher standard is just unfair, and it's hurting small businesses. For my building, the air travels from the furnace in the basement to each unit through a duct. And then it goes through a separate cold air return 2 and 3 stories back to the basement where it goes through a filter. That feels safer than taking my son to the doctor's office. There is better technology coming, such as mini splits, but we're just not there yet, but I feel that we will be in a few years. So I recommend that we wait and continue to grandfather these in, and as the units expire, then is the time to make the investment. The second concern I have is with the knockout panels. Creating additional emergency exits may improve safety. However, they create a security risk and a hazard, as children wandering through the neighborhood can climb up those and fall off. Thieves and malicious actors can climb up those steps from the outside. In addition, they are unsightly and create an eyesore. So we want safety, but we also want an attractive and safe neighborhood. So I strongly recommend that the city allow these conversions to instead use commercial fire escape ladders. If you go to Lowe's.com or HomeDepot.com, these ladders are $100 to $300. They are fully assembled, portable, easy to use, fire resistant, and tested over 1,000 pounds capacity. They would provide a much more affordable option and less promoting for theft and mischief. Secondly, if an apartment has a window that can climb out onto a porch, I feel that should be significant. That should be sufficient enough to be considered a second egress, in addition to the knockout panels. So I propose that we keep the knockout panels as they have been grandfathered in. And, I'm all for safety, but for a small 4, 5, 6 unit house that has been converted into apartments, I have done 3 conversions back to single family and removed those unsightly exterior stairs. I had one property that I brought back to single family that had 3 sets of stairs coming from the outside, and the neighbors thanked me. However, it's the timing to do so is when we are not going to disrupt tenants' lives and sort of unnatural attrition of their own. So what I'm curious to know is, what has Des Moines done to see what other banner cities across the nation have done to address these issues. These conversions exist in every city, especially in cities like Seattle, Portland, Austin, New York. They allow people to live in neighborhoods they might not otherwise be able to afford. Many of my tenants tell me they are so grateful that they get to deal with a human instead of being just a number in one of these large complexes. So this is a choice. The tenants are choosing to live in these smaller conversions. And they're very important to allow people to start a small business in this industry. So I humbly request, and I will close by requesting that these continue to be grandfathered in as they have been, and they are declining through natural attrition over time. Any major changes should be phased in over a much longer period of time so that property owners can properly budget and to be able to pay for these changes. This cost will ultimately be passed on to the renters and wipe out many units of affordable housing. My other request is if the city strongly wants to implement this, that they offer some grants for small business owners to be able to afford such changes. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person is Carrie Ann Ryan. I don't see her on here though. And then the
Okay.
next person is Becky Wee, H-I-U. I don't see her on the list as a participant either.
Okay.
And then Jeff Jensen is my next person on the list. If you want to talk, Mr. Jensen. You go to participants or you can unmute yourself.
Oh yeah, thank you. Just to echo the first participant, I just think that many of these, while good and well-intentioned policies and obviously safety at the top of everyone's priority list, I think we need to consider the small business owner and the impact on the community and the people that provide the affordable housing for these people of our community, and give them the opportunity to start climbing up the economic ladder by providing affordable housing. So I definitely think that we should think about it in a little bit longer terms and grandfather some people in so that we can make it affordable and also economical for the small business owners. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no more people on my list. If people want to raise their hand, then we will, if they want to speak.
My name is Les Solgrove. I do have a question. I'm a local realtor here in the Des Moines Metro. Just regarding the single source forced air heating systems, do we have any idea how many current rentals are currently in this situation?
No, we do not have a number of those units.
So, and then I would like to echo the suggestion that there be some sort of maybe a potential for grants of some sort to pay for that if there is something available, because landlords right now are getting just hammered with COVID situations, and we've got to be cognizant of that as well, because otherwise we're just going to drive the rental business outside of the metro.
Absolutely.
Tim Mulcahy has his hand up.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I want to start off with positives. I appreciate some of the system changes. I think that's going to be a really good thing in terms of saving time with sending back the application or whatever that's called and putting that in the mail and then having to call somebody. I had a question though about that process. I think when I saw the presentation, it said there was going to be an email 60 days prior to the inspect date. Is the inspect date the date of the certification ending, or is the city going to just schedule the date in advance and communicate that to us and say, this is the date of the inspection type of thing? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it did. And thank you for the question. I think the idea is that the computer will automatically say, then in 60 days, these 10 licenses will expire, and generate a email to those 10 people automatically behind the scenes without, just send it out saying, please be aware that your license will expire in 60 days, and give you sort of a reminder, go into your self-service portal, make sure your information's correct. You can prepay for your initial inspection and contact the inspector to request the inspection from the portal. Then in the background, that will go to the inspector saying that Tim has requested an inspection, and then he will get back to you, probably quite similar to what he does now, and set up the inspection. It's sort of to mirror, I guess, the current practice where we send out a packet in the mail. So we're trying to get away from that sort of redundant paperwork and mailing costs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I don't getting the packet. And I noticed you stopped mailing the packet here recently. You just the letter had a link to a website, which is fine because we don't need to be printing and sending more paper. So
Yeah, that was sort of the let's quit, deforesting the world with packets. So
yeah, and I like the online payment. That's a good plan too. I don't care if I pay in advance or after. It's just nice not to have to send a check. And so yeah, I want to echo the comments about the heat sourcing, and I have 2 houses that have the shared heat sourcing, and that's a huge concern for me. And I echo the comments of Maria in regards to the impacts are huge, and I think there's better technology, more affordable options to reduce the potential concerns that seems to be, about health and safety. And so I hope that there's opportunities to explore those before we go, head first into this option of removing that. I literally, and I think, Ms. Donovan, I've been emailing you about this. I mean, I've lost sleep about what the impacts to this are going to be in terms of how much is this going to cost? What's the impact going to be to my tenants if I have to tear up walls to get into removing duct work and, putting a new furnace in. I mean, this is a really big deal. And like she said, Maria, it's not just the HVAC, it's the electrical, it's, gas lines. If you put a new furnace in, I know there's these other options with mini splits and baseboards that have been talked about, but all of those sort of have a waterfall of implications on other things that you have to do. And again, I appreciate the city, from what I saw from the presentation, saying, well, you have until 2025 to do it, which is great, but still, I've had 2 duplexes for 20 years and I've had no problems. And I know the pandemic has changed life and everything else, but, like Maria mentioned, you've got schools and doctors' offices and other organizations that share all these things, and they don't seem to have problems. So, what's the big push, coming back at us? And I also echo her sentiment that my duplexes in the location they're in provide very affordable housing because I have 2 rental incomes from a single house. And I couldn't rent that house as a single family house for the amount of revenue that I take in as a duplex, but I also wouldn't have the type of tenants that I have in the duplex if it was a single family house, because I can, I'm splitting the cost between 2 tenants versus 1. And so, I get a lot of people that are new in terms of, renting and having their own place, a lot of young people, a lot of, people in certain types of jobs and things like that. So I think this is going to have a huge impact on the market, and it's going to, it's obviously going to trickle down to the tenants, and it's going to increase the prices and everything else. And so I don't know what else we can do. Like I told you, Ms. Donovan, I don't have all the answers. I just am expressing my concerns, and as an owner who tries to provide good, clean, affordable housing, This one really, really worries me. So I'm here to just really find out more, and I'm really curious. And whatever happens, happens. But it's going to be a tough one for us, I think. Thank you.
Yep, thanks for sharing.
Jay has his hand up.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this, and I also want to compliment the department for all the hard work you do to keep things safe for tenants and make sure there's the properties in Des Moines are well kept up. I've had pretty good relationships through the years with inspectors and so forth. But I do want to agree with Maria and the gentleman who just spoke, particularly about the heat source issue, because that would impact a couple of properties I have too. And I'm like the previous commenters. I don't have a lot of properties. I just have a handful. They're not. It's not like I'm making a lot of money. I'm making a reasonable amount. It does take work. It does take a lot to keep them in really good shape, which is what I want to do, because I want to have something that's nice, that offers an option, as Maria mentioned earlier, that some people like to live in in houses that have been converted into 3, 4 units, 5 units. They don't want to live in a big apartment complex, and they're happy to have something that's affordable. And I'm curious about the heat source thing. I've been wanting over the last week or two to do some research myself, but I'm just wondering what if there have been studies, and if there have been documented cases where this is some kind of systemic problem. I don't I don't know if you have the answer to that or not, but I agree that we have shared space scenarios that we go through everywhere. Airplanes, our workspaces. You go to a retail store, maybe a small store. People are there. You have cruise ships that use the same sources, and it just seems like we should explore any other options. I'm curious. For example, I think there's electronic filters, and I wanted to get some research on this that are designed to really take care of airborne viruses and things like that. That would be a much less intrusive way to handle this, it seems like, because I've looked at the cost too, and I'm looking at $20,000-$30,000. That's just multiple years of revenues and income, and I'm happy to do it. And if I felt that this was a tremendous safety issue, I would have done it. You wouldn't have had to tell me to do it. I would have done it a long time ago. And but I've had these places for a while, and we've never seen any issues. We haven't had any problems with that. So I really do hope that you take a little bit more time to think this through. I do agree that if this is going to be imposed upon us, there should be some kind of relief for it. We have been hit hard, and most of us, I think, on this call are on this call because we want to do the right thing. We want to provide a good housing product for tenants. We're not slumlords. I know there's some out there. They always give us a bad name, but most of us, I think, on this call and are here because we want to do the right thing and we want to provide good, affordable housing. And I also have some concerns. I love the suggestions that Maria had on the knockout panel alternatives. I think there's things that can be done that could be less intrusive and costly, because that can really be a big impact as well. So thank you for giving us a chance to voice our concerns. I appreciate it. And
Yeah, thank you.
that we,
I did take the opportunity to talk to the fire department about Maria's suggestion. And they said that those rope ladders are not compliant with the fire code. So I'd have to do some more work on that if that's something that gets suggested going forward. I also, I just have to reiterate that this shared air problem is a requirement of the International Mechanical Code, which the city has adopted. And we've pretty much been told by the Building and Fire Appeals Board that we need to follow those guidelines on the shared air. I know when they do writing the international codes, they bring together people from all over the United States and they study and do research on those codes. I don't know for a fact, but I would hazard a guess that this has been an issue in other communities, and when they passed that as part of the mechanical code years ago, they didn't do it lightly either. So we're sort of coming at it from that perspective, and that group of experts telling us that this is a nuisance. They even put it in the mechanical code that this creates a nuisance. I do totally understand the points about you go into a doctor's office in a shared space. Makes me uncomfortable to sort of think about that when, under the circumstances. But on the other hand, you go home from the doctor and you remain sick in your unit. You're supposed to stay home from work. I don't know. I understand. I totally get the economics of this. It's sort of being directed at us from the mechanical code. So we'll have to see where it goes. I mean, we have up till today taken the approach that when a forced air unit goes bad, then it needs to be separated for each unit. So we've been told that's not fast enough. So we'll just have to figure out what to do. And that's why I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, no, I understand too. And I think that, obviously there are things all across the city, not just in the housing part of it, but in single family homes privately owned that aren't up to code, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we recognize some of that as a grandfather provision, and we, obviously anything new we abide by the code. But this is one of those things where if we knew it was that's why I wish we knew that this was a systemic problem. It was causing things. It's hard for me to imagine if they describe it as a nuisance. I can't even think of that to describe how I've, managed these properties all these years. It hasn't been a nuisance. There hasn't been any cases of people getting sick. There haven't been any cases of problems that would be the result of shared heat source. So that part is it doesn't comport with my reality that I've experienced over the years. So that's my view.
Yep. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no,
Tim Mulcahy, sorry, Tim Mulcahy had his hand up. I was just going to move on. Oh, you have another question.
No, I'm good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Tim? You press *6 to unmute. There we go.
All right. Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, back to Ms. Donovan's comments. What would be nice is to have some help, and I know if it is 2025, which is the timeline that we have to meet, it would be nice to have some help to understand what would be the options that we could undertake to be in compliance. Because, I like I said before, I called folks as soon as I had an understanding of what this could potentially mean, and I called Wyckoff Heating and Cooling, and they're telling me it's like everybody else said, $15,000-$20,000 to do this. But then he also said there's other options. You can install the split units, you can install the baseboard heating, you could upgrade the electrical, you can do all this stuff. And so, honestly, I don't know which one of those things would be okay. Which one of those things would be allowed. Is it just one of those things? Is it multiple? It's just like, so it would just be nice, especially, and I think the city has more resources in terms of, what's right and what's wrong and what would be good and what wouldn't be good, to at least give us some direction. If it does get passed, give us some direction. This is what's allowed, this is what's not, this is what you could do, because again, this is the whole area where obviously I'm not an expert in, with the HVAC or whatever else, but rather than putting in a new furnace and doing all this work to upgrade the ductwork and to change all these things, what would be some other avenues that we could take? And so again, if it passes, it would be very helpful if we could get some more direction. So, like I said, I've done a little bit of research already, and I'm very concerned. But anything the city could do to help us, whether it's information, expertise, grants, obviously we'll take whatever we can get. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mitch Caluzzi has his hand up.
Hey guys, I got some kids screaming in the background, so I apologize in advance of that. I just wanted to jump on and say thanks, Sue Ann, for sending things out ahead of time for us to consider. Largely, I am in support of this. We've been through a few hundred units in the last 6 months, and these pass-through units, I think, are a big deal. From a fire safety standpoint, I see a lot of tenants placing bookshelves in front of them, putting beds, mattresses, et cetera, in front of them. So I understand the fire code issue. And we're actually in the process of downgrading some of our units to comply with the future code. Now, what I'm seeing from a personal side is the expenditure associated with downgrading units. So taking fourplexes down to duplexes to make these compliance components work. I see that as a real economic impact and some economic obsolescence in the future for a lot of these conversions throughout the city. I also acknowledge and respect the idea that mechanical downgrades or mechanical separation as well as electrical separation has been on the books for a while, and it is in compliance with the mechanical code, not for COVID reasons, but the overall fire safety and air quality concerns. So I respect that, and I appreciate that the city's moving that direction. As a representative of a lot of investors, I do see a concern with that from the impact, but I just wanted to state that I am in support of the systematic progress that the city's trying to push for us. I would humbly request, as I have in the past, Sue Ann, that we look for some kind of carrot for the investor community, whether it be tax abatement or something to that aspect to offset the extreme costs that will be associated with these upgrades.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yep.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Judy McClure, I see you.
Yep. I think in an email conversation with Sue Ann and other folks, I had a question about whether or not the shared spaces in a house conversion, such as storage and laundry in the basement or a shared interior stairway and entryway, if they would also need to have a separate heating and cooling system.
I haven't had a chance to research that. I really do apologize. I know I saw that I've just had sort of not been at my desk much, or at my desk in meetings, but I will find out. Okay.
Okay. I would like to not leave my basement unheated or air conditioned, and yet myself and two tenants make use of the laundry there. I have part of my business, the hat shop, storage there. And the front hall has, of course, as an 1895 house, has one of those very large gravity, when it was a gravity furnace, one of those very large return airs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
the issue.
Yep. Let me check on that.
Okay, I thank you.
Yep.
Maria, I see you have your hand up again. Or do you want to let Jimmy Kakar go before you?
Hi
You're
there.
muted. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Is this Jimmy? Yeah.
Thank you so much. A couple of questions that were coming in the mind as some of these buildings which were built, in 50s or 60s, I've tried asking the HVAC people to see if we can separate it, but and in certain buildings, the way the ductwork was done, it seems that there will be significant tearing of the units to redo the ductwork. So a question that was coming to the mind was that instead of going with, again, centralized ductwork system, can we go more like a window-based heating and cooling system? So, just like window air conditioners, there are some electric-based heating systems. Or is this only and a second question is this only for forced air systems? What about the broiler-based systems? Are they outside of this current concern of converting the, forced air systems?
Yeah, boilers are not involved in this discussion. It's just the forced air, shared air systems. So if you have a boiler system, don't worry about it.
Okay, but if somebody does not have a boiler-based system, or it's more like about the forced air system, can, because the ductwork cannot be separated, or there is not enough space to put individual, furnaces, can we go for more window-based heating and cooling systems then?
I think what I'm hearing is that people want some maybe more guidance. And I'm happy to talk to our mechanical inspectors and our mechanical staff that know more about this than I do, about how you could convert to some of the split units that they have that are heat and air and go through the wall. I don't know how they gauge square footage for those units, that type of thing. But I am going to do just a little more digging, see what I can find out, and then hopefully share that with whoever's interested.
Okay. And one more follow-up question. Have there been any timelines of implementation? Has that been discussed, or is this still in a discussion phase and not yet a law that has started being enforced?
It is in the discussion phase. It is something that still has to be drafted and taken to council for approval. The sort of suggestion that I have rolled out is that it's 2 inspections after July of this year, but no later than July of 2025, to get everybody a chance to get in and get the repairs and do the whatever they need to do to meet code. So that is my suggestion that we're rolling out. Doesn't mean that council can't change it or grant more time or less time. It's totally up to council. I'm taking a stab at what I think is sort of a reasonable balance. And that's sort of where we're at. That's why we're having meetings and discussions.
And I know somebody just asked that will there be any financial compensations or maybe some kind of federal funds available to do these changes, because some of these changes will be very expensive, and I hope that city has a heart to understand that there will be an impact to people's bottom line.
I
And
think that
and don't think that landlords are making money, please. We need to correct if that's a misnotion. With all these CDC's eviction moratoriums, landlords are suffering like anything. I don't know about others, but I can talk about at least for myself and couple that I know.
Absolutely.
yeah, and that, that's sort of, taking that into consideration, the rollout, that I'm proposing pushes it back to hopefully the COVID crisis will be behind us before we start to implement this. It's the timing has to be thought about too. You're right. I do not know that we have any grants available. It is something that, can be looked at. Mitch mentioned tax abatement. I'd have to get with the staff that manages tax abatement and see if that is something that can be offered. I will certainly check on that.
Absolutely.
And so sorry, since I have the floor, I'm just taking liberty to ask a couple of other questions. Is that okay, or shall I wait for my turn to come back?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So is this a rule which only City of Des Moines is implementing, or are you aware of other cities also having the similar type of mandates?
I don't know, for instance, on the separation of the heating units, what other cities have been doing. I know that we've taken the approach that once they went bad, we would make them be separated. But then we were told, pretty strongly by the Building and Fire Appeals Board that wasn't good enough, that we needed to implement a faster strategy. And so that's what we're trying to balance out now.
Okay. Is there some number of units that, for example, if a building has 4 units or more, then you cannot have shared, but if you have a duplex, then shared is okay? Or is there a minimum number, or is it like, any shared air 2 or up, it falls under this criteria?
Any shared air, it falls under this criteria from the mechanical code.
Okay. And I'm assuming that when we say that there have been studies and other done, and I was trying to look into the links as well. Thank you so much for sharing the International Mechanical Code. I think I responded back in the email that I did look into the CDC guideline. Currently, they don't seem to have any concern of disease spread due to shared air. And actually, from our current units, I can corroborate based on the factual data that even if one unit was impacted, it did not spread to other units. And I don't know how others have seen that, but if we share that data, would that be any help to reconsider some of these things that we are trying to implement, especially because other cities don't seem to be moving in this direction?
Well, I can't say that other cities haven't. I am, and it was mentioned before that one of the concerns also is fire safety, because when you have shared air, it can move smoke and fire through the other units faster. So that's also a concern. I have to stand by the fact that the mechanical code is researched by experts in the field. It's not CDC. It's the building fire safety people. that have determined that shared air is a problem and it's a nuisance. And from whether it's fire or air quality or whatever it is, they have determined that it is a nuisance to have the shared air. Now, have I done an independent study? No, I have not done an independent study. I'm going by what our code says.
Sure, sure. And again, it's not about resisting a change. I'm sure there is a reason for the change. It's just that I think at the moment it's more about being in a desperate situation to ask for any help that we can get as making these changes, especially when electricity is also limited. We may in some cases end up, if you have to install more furnaces, then that may require the landlord to bring in a bigger power things. So there are a lot of different concerns that come up in separating the units. So any help will be grateful to you to provide any other specific, or any other alternatives or any other mitigation strategies or anything else that we can do.
Yeah, and I'm certainly taking from this conversation the understanding that I need to do it, and I will do more research. I don't know that I'm going to have all the answers, but I would like to talk to our mechanical inspectors and use their expertise to better inform what some options might be.
That will be helpful. Thank you so much, Sven, for taking those comments.
Yep, thank you.
Maria, you can go now. I need you to unmute. Can you hear me?
Unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, I want to reiterate, circle back again to what Jimmy and Jay and Tim, and I'm forgetting names, but thank you for speaking up. And I guess sometimes good intentions can also go the wrong direction. For example, I have a fourplex that was, the furnace went out and baseboard heating was put in, and all the electrical panels needed to be upgraded. And unfortunately, that baseboard heating is not efficient at all. And it's in itself a fire hazard because tenants put things on top of them, they throw blankets on top of them, and they're quite dangerous. So trading one problem for another. On top of that, the tenants had sticker shock because when they got the bill, they started doing things like turning on their gas stove for heat, which I paid for. And so or they weren't running the heat. And then when they would leave town, pipes would freeze. So my concern is we're trading one problem for another. I just want to reiterate and request that we leave small properties grandfathered in. They are naturally declining thanks to just decay. And when it's time to remodel a property, for example, when an emergency exit is done, that's when I do a conversion, is when it's time. Or when all my tenants are month to month, then it's time. So it's difficult logistically to displace residents. So there's so many aspects that come into play when doing either a density reduction or making major structural changes to a building. On top of that, this is doubly singling out small businesses, and that's what I want to reiterate. My son lives on the 22nd floor of a high-rise, and so if anytime he wants to leave, he is sharing airspace in an elevator with other residents. And so to me, that is more dangerous than seeing ductwork travel back and forth. So I just want to request that please consider delaying this until well after the pandemic is over and phasing it in and offering some help. Thank you.
Okay, Rod, Elder.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I own 4 properties. We are already smothered with taxes and insurance. Mine are all single units, so there isn't a shared airspace consideration, but something crossed my mind as far as the ones that do have shared air, and that is that masks are little more than filters. All of us have filters that we keep up to date in our units. And I think that those filters could be upgraded to ensure at least disease-free air. Also, the knockout panels and the shared heating is in all likelihood going to decrease the number of units available here. And at one point you said that you wanted to, let me see, I had a note here, how you put it. You wanted to maintain the housing stock. These things are going to reduce that housing stock. Of course, all of us pay taxes on any money that we make besides the property taxes on the property we own. So you're going to reduce your tax flow by decreasing the number of units. The occupation by family members, that's also going to reduce your housing stock. And we are going to wind up with another business account on file. And I've got an envelope. It's almost too much for a manila envelope of offers to buy my properties. These people just harass you, okay? And they stalk you by going on to public records sites to dig up your personal information so that they can do that. So the less availability of that we have, the better off we're going to be. So those are some of my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Whoever has the phone number 251-4570, can you give me your name and then you can go ahead and speak?
Roberta McAfee.
Okay, thank you.
And I actually got several things I wanted to ask about. One, the removing the knockout panels, unless we're going to put unsightly stairs on the outside of the building, and as I believe Maria said, you're opening yourself up to theft and break-ins. If we're going to have to downsize the number of units, that should correlate directly to the property values. What is going to be done? Because getting the assessor to lower our property values is like pulling teeth. Are we going to get any assistance if it's no longer a fourplex and now it's only a 3, and we've lost, if you lose $500 a month, then you're going to be losing $6,000 a year income. But the property taxes don't go down. What is the plan for a reduction in assessed value and therefore property taxes? Hello?
Hi.
Oh, did you not hear me?
I don't know if that's a question Sue can answer. Or
Okay,
she's
but if-
Sorry, I
muted.
was
There we
muted.
go. There she is.
Yep, I was muted. Roberta, I cannot answer that question.
Okay, so we don't, because if our taxes are going to go up exponentially and our income goes down, I see that as a double whammy again. The training, I want to, what's the training updates? It says must be completed by all owners and property managers. What is that going to look like? Are you seriously, every owner that hires a property manager still has to take the training classes?
Not if they hire a property manager, whoever's managed the property has to go through the training.
Okay. And then where will that training, where is that going to come from? Is it going to be required to be through the city, or are we going to have other sources?
It will be produced and required through the city. We hope to have it be an interactive online training. That's the plan.
Okay, will there be a cost to that?
I'm not anticipating that.
Okay. And then, fair housing. If we get our fair housing certification from somewhere else, is that going to count, or are we going to have to go through the city again?
Where else are you getting fair housing certification?
Realtor. I've got a real estate license, and we are required to take, I guess it's law and fair, well, we do law and ethics. Okay, so maybe fair housing.
Is it law and ethics?
We have law update of 8 hours, and we have ethics 4 hours.
I doubt that will I don't know that will comply with what the Human Rights Commission is looking for fair housing training, but I can certainly ask Human Rights.
And then how often is the training? Is it a one and done, or is it going to have to have been ongoing?
It will probably be a one and done until there's some update that needs to be presented, and then there would be an updated version.
Okay. All right. And then my last comments were on the fee structure. We've been told, that you haven't changed the fee structure since 2007, and that's not totally true in my mind, because you've changed the certificate length, you've changed shortening the certificates for if there's a violation, our certificate gets shortened, and so we're paying more for a shorter certificate. If we don't turn in paperwork, we lose a year on our certificate. I guess I find it hard to believe that the cost of these certificates is not covering the cost of actually, how do they say it, the inspection service. What is it costing to do an inspection?
When we did the fee study back in, I don't know when it was, they did the cost of the increment of how long it takes to do the inspection. They came up with the cost, and we have not upgraded that since the fee study was done. I think we did a one across the board 3% in 2007. So the fees that we charge for the inspection service is not kept pace with the cost of living and our salaries. So we're trying to figure out how to bring it more in line. You are right. An argument could be made that the shorter certificate is an increase in fees, but I don't see it that way. If somebody has managed their properties well, then they get the longer certificate. If we are out there managing the properties for them because they're not doing the repairs until we get out there and tell them what to do, then we need to be out there more often in order to make sure those properties are not declining. So in some respect, the landlord can manage the cost of their program by getting out there and doing the repairs and maintaining the property before we come out.
And there are several things in the rental inspection that are very subjective, and I can work and work and work and work, and I will still have an inspector write me up for something, and it costs me a year on my certificate. I argue, health and safety. Health and safety, I'll take that all day long. But when it becomes subjective, and it's a patch that he doesn't deem is done well enough, that it cost me a year and an extra $55. So my certificate just went from $87 for 3.5 years to $142 for 2.5 years. And then some of them will write, they'll write up every single tiny thing on a separate line rather than grouping it. Paint. No, we have to paint the north wall, we got to paint the south wall, we got to paint the east wall, and they've just, it's just the subjective part of it is where it's what's very frustrating. We spend a lot of time working on our properties, and all I feel like we're getting done is being beat up some more and finding other ways to take revenue.
Absolutely.
Well, Roberta, we're going through some training stuff right now. I respect your comments. I don't like to hear that somebody is writing an inspection report that is so detailed that it says, the north wall, the south wall, the ceiling, so they're each individual violations. So that's something that I think we need to work on, and I'm happy that you brought it to my attention. Part of an ongoing training and managing of a program is to know what is going on from your perspective so that I can use it for training on my side. I welcome feedback from the landlords to tell me, hey, I think there's a problem here. I have a fear that some people think that if they bring it to me, then they're going to get on the blackball list or the blacklist or whatever you call it. And that is not true. When somebody brings me something that I can look at and use it to improve the program, I certainly don't go into the room of inspectors and say, hey, Joe Blow is now complaining about blah, 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 and then have it get, through the system that a particular landlord made a particular complaint. I don't operate that way. I take it very seriously. I look into it. I never breathe a word of where it came from, but I can use it as a training tool. So if anybody ever has anything that they think I should look at in order to improve the program and to have a better across the board inspections and less of this subjectivity, then I need to know so that I can improve the program. So please reach out to me. Like I said, it's not going to be one of those things where your name is going to get dropped and all of a sudden you feel like, somebody's picking on you. That doesn't, we don't work that way. I don't work that way. So if you have issues with violation notices where somebody's writing it, one thing at a time, and one saying, paint the interior of apartment number 2, that's something that we need to work out internally. So those notices go out as much the same as they can across the board.
Okay. And then my last question would be, with this new system, and I love the sound of having it all computerized so that we can go in and do our self self-service function. Will the property managers get junk and debris notices? My understanding is that any owner that has a property, a rental property in the city of Des Moines, and they live outside of Polk County, that they are supposed to have a property manager in county. Now, am I wrong on that? Is that correct, or am I making that up?
No, people that live outside of the general metropolitan area, for instance, Denver or Minneapolis or somewhere out, they need to have a local property manager.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, then that was my understanding. My question, and I've brought this up before, is then why am I, as the property manager, not notified or not in the loop of those junk and debris notices, or those violations, or those 48-hour notices, or those 5-day notices? A lot of my owners are out of state or unable to understand what those notices mean, and by the time they get them and get it back to me or call me all upset, we could have taken care of it had we known. Is this new system going to allow the property managers to be notified, or are we still going to be out of the loop?
That's a very good question. We're just working out how that system is going to work, and building some of those programs in. And I will look into that. I would like to have a courtesy notice go to the property management agent from the code side, and let me ask and see how we can make that. If we can make it work, how do we make it work?
I would love to see that. That's been one of my complaints for years, is that they're required to have a property manager, but you guys never, ever contact us. The only way I find out about it is when they call me after the fact, or all upset because they got a notice that they don't understand.
Yeah, and Chapter 42, which is the junk and debris ordinance, is written to comply with state code on notification, so that we can do a cleanup and collect the costs. And so there are certain requirements by state law that we still have to notify the property owner, but it doesn't mean that we can't somehow give a heads up to the property maintenance person, on the code side or on the rental side, that this is going on. I just got to figure out how to make that work. It doesn't mean, though, that we don't have an obligation and will not continue to have the obligation under state law to notify the property owner themselves. So,
right. But if it came out to us as a CC or an email, or then because most of it is minor stuff, and maintenance is out with their truck and trailer, and we can pick it up within a day or two if we know about it.
yep, I totally understand that. I think it's a good idea, and I think we can. I will see how we can make that work, if we can make it work.
That
I mean,
would
if we have that capability under the new system, we should take advantage of it.
That would be wonderful. That's all I've got.
I want to move on to caller at 971-4864. If you can give me your name, and you can unmute by pressing *6.
Dolores, I think we have till 6:30, and then won't.
Yeah,
Will
we
this
have until
shut itself
6:30,
down
so
at-
we're going to have to, keep these
Okay,
kind of
so
short now.
yeah, we'll take a couple more comments before this. I think it'll just shut us off at 6:30. So
The caller, what's your name again?
Corey Blood.
Okay.
So
Go
I've got to agree a lot with what Roberta just talked about right there at the end with notifying the property owners. I've got property management, and there has been many of my units. Well, there's been a few of my units that I get notified, and it's been taking days for the mail to get to me, and then I've got to notify my property manager, and then he's got to try to get a hold of the residents or take care of a problem himself. It's just, I think definitely with the new computer system, if we could definitely get that in place to where the property manager could be notified either independently or at least with the property owner, it would definitely relieve a lot of headaches. One other thing that I had a question about is, what about the large housings that's like student housing where you rent by room? Is that going to have an effect on the single source air?
I think those are rooming house type things, and I don't believe mechanical makes each bedroom have its own heating source. That's more of a shared living space, like a family living space.
Got it. Got it. All right, that's kind of what I was figuring out, but I just wanted to ask that question. But I'm with many of the others that's talking about the conversion. You know, just the cost effective just doesn't make sense to a property owner to try to make that unless they've got some type of help from the city. So that's what I wanted to share, and thank you very much for the calls, and look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Jeff Jensen?
Hi there. I think this question might have been asked slightly differently, but I guess as it relates to the fire exits and the heating sources, do we know if the surrounding suburbs, are they considering the same types of measures?
I am not sure how many of these situations we have in the suburbs. These are generally older houses that have been split into units. I don't know the answer to that question. Like, again, we're just going by our mechanical code and our building code and our fire code are, sort of asking us to do this.
Any other questions or comments?
I want to thank everybody for joining us. And I want to thank everybody for your input. This is helpful and informative and gives us some things to continue to work on.
Thank you for asking for our input.
Yep. Anybody can feel free to shoot me an email too if you think of something or have more comments or suggestions or anything you think we can do to improve our program and the subjectivity and the training portion for our inspectors.
So Suen, as a next step, would you be capturing these comments and posting it to a site or send the minutes, or what's the follow-up on the questions that we have asked?
The follow-up to the questions are generally put together in a presentation to City Council so they can hear through us what you've said and then give us feedback on what direction they want us to take. So I use this to inform council of the questions and concerns that came up.
So are you saying that we can count on you as our advocate to the City Council?
I will tell them what the questions and concerns were, and I will try to give them some ideas like on the mechanical splits, and I'll tell them that some people were interested in grants and tax abatement came up. I'll tell them what you said, and then I will wait for direction.
Thank you so much.
I'll be honest, I'm also going to tell them that I think the safety codes need to be followed. And we need to follow through on that. Now, if they want to postpone it or grant extensions or do something else, I will certainly, that's their prerogative. So.
Sure. And so I'm assuming there have been some incidents like this in past within the city, which probably triggered to look into these kind of evaluations. Is that a correct assumption?
Well, for the real quickly, so we don't get kicked off, for the knockout panels, what we're finding is that tenants are blocking them, and people can't use them, or they're making them inaccessible. And so you look at that and you say, well, if I was a tenant, I would probably block that. I wouldn't want somebody to be able to come into my unit in the middle of the night, just because. And so how do we make it safe? So one of the suggestions from the building department and the fire department is we need to eliminate knockout panels. So that's what we're discussing. The shared forced air system was brought to us by the Building and Fire Board of Appeals that said you need to get these separated. So individual incidents, yeah, on the knockout panels, on the heat source, it came directly from an appeals board. So that's what's leading it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And
Thank you
sorry
so
if
much,
anybody
Sue-Ann.
had any issues. I saw a few people had to re-register a couple times to get in. So sorry about that. This is kind of new to us, the Zoom. Okay. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.